So in this video, what I want to do is I want to create a photo collage in Photoshop and have you be able to watch my process. Now I'm going to try to comment as much as I can as I'm going through as to what I'm doing, especially when I'm touching on some relatively important things. But for the most part, I just want you to be able to watch and see what I'm creating. I'm kind of known for my kind of strange creations, photo collages. So I want to kind of just do one of those for you so you can see my process, my working process, see how I work. And what I want to do is coming in to this new document. I already have some of the photos I'm going to use open in Photoshop in the background. I have an idea of what I want to create, but I really do not know what I'm going to create. So it's going to be kind of this organic process. And that's usually how I create these kind of photo montages or photo collages that turn into quote unquote works of art. Is I kind of just have fun and I let my mind run away with it. So some have said that I have a very strange mind, but that's okay. I can live with that. So what we want to do first is I've gone up and I've gone File, New Document, or Command N on a Mac, Control N on a PC. I want to switch my measurement over to inches, and I want to do a 10-inch wide by 7-inch tall canvas, and I want to make sure my resolution is at 300 pixels per inch. My color mode is going to be RGB. Background right now is going to be white. I could change that to transparent or just a different color. So if I wanted to make sure that was true white, I'm just going to go ahead and select that. It'll give me something to build off of. And I'm just going to go ahead and hit create. So the reason it's important to go ahead and open or create a new document to start building is because all of these photos that I've downloaded, while huge, are all sized at 72 pixels per inch. And what I'm creating, I want to be able to print out at 10 by 7 on basically on an offset printer. So you always want to start at the resolution that you want to work in. And because when I go to pull some of these photos into this canvas, it's going to actually change the resolution of that photo to the resolution of my new document. So it's going to take a 72 pixel image and it's going to resize it so it's 300 pixels per inch. What I want to start with is I want to start with my background. Even though I have a white background layer, I want to start with my background. And one of the things I want to stress as I work through this is I'm going to be working in something called non-destructive photo editing techniques. I'm going to be using layer masks. I'm going to use adjustment layers. I'm going to be duplicating my layers. I do work with a lot of keyboard shortcuts, so I will try my best to tell you what the keyboard commands are that I'm doing. And if I can remember, I'll show you the long ways to do it. So like I said, I'm going to get started with my background image, and this is definitely part of it. I have so many images open right now that I don't know which is which. But I'm going to come in with this. This is part of it, and like I said, the sky is also part of it. So we're going to be working with those two images first. So I want to take this kind of desert scene, and I'm just going to select all, Command A or Control A on a PC, and copy Command C or Control C on a PC. I'll come over and just paste it. So long ways, edit, paste. And you can see that it has pasted it in on a new layer. I had double checked this file. I'm actually based my new file, my new artboard or canvas off of what this photo would be at 300 pixels per inch. So that's why this one fits so nicely. Next, I'm going to come in and I'm going to grab this image, this beautiful sky, which is going to replace the cloudy sky in that other image. I'm going to do Command A. To select all, Command C to copy, and I'm going to paste it in here. And we can see that this image is much larger, so in order to size this down, even somewhat before we get started, actually I'm not going to size it right now, so I'm just going to move this down into the background. So I want to get this sky out, and this does have this kind of hazy effect in the background as a proper landscape should. The further things get back, the less clear they get, a little bit more hazy they become. all these photos are found on primarily two websites, and that's unsplash.com and pexels.com, and that's PEXELS.com. I'll put links to both of those in the description. Those are free stock photography sites, and they have relatively good quality. So what I want to do now is I want to take the clouds out of here. I'm going to keep the mist. I'll probably come in and do some coloration on that, and I'll probably end up taking actually this foreground out and on one layer, and then the misty rocks on another layer, and then completely get rid of the sky. So what I want to do is I want to come over into my layers panel here and select layer 1, and I'm going to hit Command J, and this is going to duplicate that layer. And if I want to rename this, I could double click and rename it, but for right now I'm not going to do that. You can also do it the long way by clicking on this menu right up here and coming down and doing duplicate layer. You'll notice that that Photoshop doesn't give you the keyboard command, so it is Command or Control J. And I'm actually going to turn this back one off, and I'm going to work on layer 1. And so I'm going to come over to my toolbar, and I'm going to get my pen tool. It's kind of bottom third of the toolbar, and I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to basically create a path down and around basically the foreground, right? And I'm going to get really close in, and I also work with the precision tool, so I'm going to hit caps lock to get to the precision tool. So with the pen tool, what you want to remember is you want the kind of the fewest points possible. You need to click and then drag the handles out. What we don't want to do is we don't want to come in here, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit further. We don't want to go in and just click and just do straight lines and do a bunch of points like this. Okay, that's not the smart way to use the pen tool. And when you get it working into larger images, you're going to actually see the rigidity of that line. So what you do is you can click out on the outside of the photo, and you're going to click and drag in the direction that you are planning to put your next point. With this file, I'm gonna be moving down and across. So as long as you can remember to click and drag on every point in the direction that you're going, and I'll show you some tricks along the way as well. But if you can remember that, then you're going to be good to go. The pen tool is going to be relatively easy to use and your friend. So I'm just going to start doing this, and I'm clicking and I'm dragging, and I'll say with the more experience you get, the easier this becomes. But you'll always learn new things and also screw up things like I just did. So I hit the wrong key on the keyboard, and that kind of screwed everything up. So I'm going to zoom back in here, grab my pen tool, start back where I left off, and I'm just going to move across scenery, dragging these handles out. I'm going to get here. I'm not going to drag the handles out because I'm changing directions. I click my next point out here, it's going to dip my line way down. So if I do that, you'll kind of see, if I zoom in, you can see how it kind of dipped down there. To prevent that, if I hold down Option and I click on the point, it takes away that handle and allows me to do a nice right angle, or a sharp angle right at that point. as I get to the end here, I'm gonna switch over and I'm gonna zoom out, and you can kind of see the excuse me, the paths all the way across the mountain. And you may have thought when I was doing that, man, he's using a lot of points. Well, up on this rocky cliff, it got to a point where I had to use a lot of points. But now that I'm done, I'm going to come down. I'm just going to continue my selection down on the outside all the way around. And I'm going to make sure that I close it up here. So you'll get to this point, and if we zoom in here, once we go roll over, you'll notice the pen tool with a circle on the lower right hand corner. That means I'm about to close my path. So I'm going to go ahead and click that and close the path and zoom out the correct way here and move back over. So what we want to do now is we want to go into our paths panel, which should be grouped with our layers. And right now it's called a work path, and I want to save that path. So the way I need to do it is I need to double click on that path, and it's going to come up save path, and I'm going to call this foreground. I still have my caps on, but that's okay. Foreground. And this is going to actually save this path. So I could go in and create a new path, which I'm going to have to do with this background layer. But what we want to do now with our path is we want to come in here, make sure our foreground path is selected, and then come down the bottom of the paths panel and come to the third button from the left, and it's load path as selection, or basically you're going to turn your path into marching ants. So we're going to go ahead and click that, and you can see that it's now a selection. Then we're going to come back over to layers, and we are going to come down to the bottom of our layers panel and hit the third button from the left again, and that should take out our background. Now, if you don't get the effect that you want, like if it knocked out the foreground and not the background, you just need to inverse your selection, and you do that by going up to select inverse, which is grayed out right here, but select inverse, and then try apply your layer mask. So I'm pretty happy with that. I don't know that I'm going to go back through with this guy and get these background mountains in. I may as I work. But I'm going to come in, and now I think I'm ready to scale my sky. So I'm going to hit Command T. You can see how massive this photo is. And just scale it down a little bit. I really like the coloring of this sky. Quite a bit. I think it's a waterfront or something like that, but I like the colors it gave me. And I'm going to do some more work on the foreground a little bit as far as color is concerned. And so to do that, I'm going to make sure I have layer 1 selected. And I'm going to come down to the fourth icon from the left, or this little half circle thing. And I'm going to come in here, and this is called an adjustment layer, and I'll show you what it does. And I'm going to come down probably to hue and saturation, which is going to open up something else. And it opens up my properties. I'm not going to be able to zoom in on this, but as we pull the hue to the left and to the right, you can see that it's changing the color of the image. Now it's changing all the layers. It's changing both the background and the foreground, and I only want this to apply to the foreground. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over into my layers panel, and I'm going to hover right over in between these two layers while holding down Option or Alt on a PC. And you see how my icon changes from a hand to a box with a little arrow on it? That's going to take this adjustment layer and nest it or attach it to the layer 1 copy. And by doing that, now my adjustments, whatever I decide to make with this adjustment layer, will only affect my foreground. So if I want to pull like the lightness down, or the saturation down rather, and then kind of play with the coloring a little bit more, you can do this. I'm doing this on the master. You can do reds. You can do all the different colors in the image. So reds, yellows, greens, cyans, blues, magentas. And this is just one of many. So if I got in here and I didn't really like, I can make it really saturated. I didn't really like what was going on with this adjustment layer. I may try another adjustment layer. I'm gonna leave it right just like that. I'm not even sure that's what I want, but I'm gonna leave it there for right now. So I'm looking through these. So this is the star of the show, at least for this photo collage. So I'm just gonna kind of select with my lasso tool and around here. I don't need any of the background. I really just want the monkey. I'm gonna hit Command C, and I'm gonna come into my Untitled document. I'm gonna hit Command V, and that's pasted him in here. It's a little big still. One of the things I want to do now is I want to go ahead and save my file, and you want to make sure that you save early and you save often. So I'm just gonna come File, Save As. We want to save this as a PSD file. It's the default. I'm gonna come into Demo 2. I kind of already know the direction of this, so I'm going to go ahead and name him Monkey VR layers, and just whatever the default comes up as, and hit save. So with this guy, as you can see, he's big. I'm not ready to size him down yet. I am going to do a looser variety of what I did. I'm going to be with the pen tool, but I'm going to be really careful around the areas that are relatively sharp and the areas that aren't his fur, and try to get the tail kind of perfectly. You can kind of see what's in focus and what's not. It's going to make this photo a little challenging to work with, but we'll get through it. So as you can see, I was very generous with some of the paths going around the monkey, and that's because we're going to use some techniques in our layer mask to adjust our layer mask. It's going to be a little bit difficult with this guy because his fur up top is not the sharpest, and there's not a lot of contrast between his fur and the background, but we'll get there. So again, we have our work path in our paths panel. Double click on that. I'm just going to call that monkey. I'm going to come down here. I'm going to turn it into marching ants again. Go back to my layers and click on the layer mask and take the background out. All right, I'm still keeping them at this size because I want to be able to work on the layer mask a little bit before I scale them down and I get them in the position I want and start playing with shadows and things of that nature. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this layer again. I'm going to hit Command J. I want to be able to, if I really screw this up bad, I want to have a layer to go back to. And I'm just going to bring this layer down. My monkey is going to be up front. And then with let me go into or zoom into the panels here. And if you look carefully, when we are working on an image, there are these 4 white brackets surrounding the image. That indicates that I am making edits to the image itself. This can be seen even if I click on layer 2 with a layer that does not have a layer mask. But it's even more important when we are working with images on a layer mask. And what a layer mask does, which I didn't just really describe before, is basically it's a black and white layer where black obscures and white reveals. the entirety of your image still exists. We're just telling the software what we want to see and what we don't want to see. That's why it's a non-destructive editing technique, is because we're technically not destroying that original image. So if I had not lasso tooled my monkey from the other file and brought it into this file, I would be working from the original file, and that's the case down here with our background. So all of the dusty mountains and everything are still in this photo. They're just being covered up by the black of the mask. So what we're going to do is we're going to do some additional work on the monkey, on the mask of the monkey, to get some of those details of the fur to come out. I'm going to zoom back out here and kind of walk you through what I'm going to do. So I'm going to have the mask selected. So the mask is selected by with the indication of these 4 brackets around the mask. And I'm going to come up to select, and I'm going to do select and mask. I'm going to click on that, and this is going to open up a new window. And I want to have change my view to overlay. Puts this pretty red thing on it, and I want to scroll up here, and I want to show you a couple of tools. So this is the quick selection tool, which will quickly select any item. This is a let's see, I don't know the names, I just know what they do. This is the refine edge brush tool, and this is going to allow us to get some of that fur that we're missing from that we cut out of the monkey. So we're just going to click on that. I'm going to get out of my precision tool. And what I want to do is I just want to go, and I'm going to try to zoom in here so you guys can see what's going on. I'm just going to go around his ear to start with. And what it should do is it should, as you can see, it will start to separate the background from some of the monkey's fur. So if I just go down and around, and this is where I was saying that this image may be a little bit difficult for it to distinguish between background and foreground because there is not that much contrast. But down here where there is plenty of contrast, it shouldn't be an issue. And what this allows us to do is, so there's very little contrast here. That's why that's doing that. And I'm going to do something else for this line because it's having some issues there. But it allows us not to have a really rough edge. So we can also come in here and see what we can get there. We are getting some of his fur back. But the higher the resolution of your photo is and the more contrast there is, like this image was already blurry in some regards, the better the outcome of this is going to be. You can use this for people's hair on backgrounds and stuff like that. And pets and things of that nature. And I'll see before this, or in another demo I might do, since I know this is going to be a long one, I might show you how it looks on a much higher res photo. So we're just going to I'm just coming around and trying to get as much of his fur in as possible. I think there may have been some whiskers up here. I don't know. I'll let the computer try to figure that out. But it's actually doing a fairly good job. I'm a little concerned up here because there's really, this fur is really blurry and there's really no contrast between the background and the foreground of the monkey. And you can see some instances where it went in a little bit too far on the fur. So what we can do is we can come back up to the top here and we can select the minus tool. And we're actually going to change tools, just the paint brush tool. And this is a more, like if I went right here, it's just going to take out the mask. But what I want to do is I want to just paint it back in areas I feel like it pulled too much out of. And I'm doing this very carefully. I don't think it did it a lot. It definitely did it down on the tail. I do remember that. And I know these edges are super sharp, and maybe we need to run over that again. I don't know how much of this really needed to be pulled out. And I'm going to show you another technique of getting fur out of things. It's not the most refined of techniques, but it works. So if I wanted to add the mask back in, I would go up and hit the minus, and then I'd come in and just kind of add the mask in here. And that's one way I could come in and I could blur the mask edge. That's one way. So I'm okay. I'm happy with that. I know it's not the best photo, so I think we've done the best we can. And he's also going to get a lot smaller. So we're going to go ahead and click OK. So right now I'm outputting just to my layer mask. You have some other options. You can do a new layer with a layer mask. You can do a brand new layer without a layer mask. New document with layer mask. My suggestion would do add it to the existing layer mask or do a new layer with a layer mask. You get into this new layer and it doesn't have a layer mask, it will keep the original layer that you created your layer mask on. But at this point, you can't, if any edits you make beyond that, like when we scale them down, since the layer mask is gone on that layer, you can't go back in and make any more of these types of edits. So I always want to keep my layer mask, whether it's with a new layer, excuse me, a new layer with layer mask, or just add it to my existing layer mask. I'm gonna click OK. And so now we can see some of his fur coming in from behind. There's very little haloing effect, which is nice. But let's talk about how we're going to get rid of some of these sharper edges that are down here along his bottom. So I'm going to go and I'm going to get the Smudge Tool, which is over here in my toolbar. It's the little finger. And I'm going to zoom in, and this is kind of that kind of janky way to get fur. I'm going to make my brush size relatively small. It's at 8 pixels, which is tiny, but I want to go down to like 4. And what I can do is, if I'm on my layer mask, I can smudge some of the black into the white. And I'm going to zoom way in, or I'm going to try to zoom in, so you can see how, zoom out so we don't have that, how minuscule this process is. It does not do a lot. But before I knew about the select and mask, or before that was really refined by Adobe, I used to do hair like this all the time. So this is certainly one way, right? So I can simulate kind of hair and kind of, chop that line up a little bit so that there is more of a fur type edge to the line. So if I could do that, or I could come in and I can take right underneath or I think within my smudge tool, there's also the blur tool. And so I can come in, and the strength is set to 50 right now, and I can just blur the edges of my mask to make them less sharp. You could also do that up here, just where I don't want the masks to be super sharp. That's blurring everything. It kind of matches what's going on up here. So it's just not nearly as sharp. I can kind of go over that stuff. And it probably on screen in video, it looks like it's doing nothing, but it is softening that edge considerably from a very sharp edge to a blurrier edge. So just another thing to show you is that, say that in here, I'm starting to notice that maybe some of this should have come out in my original work with the pen tool. Well, what we can do is, with the mask selected, we can go to our brush tool. And remember, black hides, white reveals. And I'm going to reduce my brush size, and I'm doing this by hitting open bracket on the keyboard. Just a little bit faster way to do it. If I right click, I can get the hardness, so I can make this a little bit of a harder brush. And I'm going to come over here and click the arrows to get black to be my foreground color. And I'm just going to go in here and paint away the things that I don't think need to be visible. And I'm adding to the layer mask. So that's what I want to make sure that that's what I'm doing and I'm not painting on the actual photo. And I can come in here and there's looks like some artifacts from when I tried to use the tool over here. Increase the brush size by hitting close bracket just to get a little bit quicker. Take some of this green out from what I guess is the plant. And then I can come in and I can do the same effects that I was doing before with either the smudge tool or the blur tool, however I want it. There's some elements in here that it looks like it took too much of the background out that I couldn't check before, so we're just going to switch this around to white for reveal. I'm going to increase the brush size a little bit. I'm just going to paint this back in. And again, I know I've gone way too far here. And you could certainly take the black brush tool and do that fur technique I showed earlier. I'm going to come in and just go with my smudge tool to kind of get fur back into this guy here. For me and for this project, this is good enough. But anyway, so I'm pretty happy with my monkey. There are definitely some coloring issues. He's definitely not colored right to match our scenery. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to scale him down now. And when I do so, everything's going to scale. And one of the things I like to play with these collages I like to play with unrealistic scale. I usually take something that's supposed to be small and I put it in a very large. I put it in a scale that is larger, kind of an unbelievable scale. And I'm just going to double click on him. And he's okay. He's ready for his next step. So I'm going to go ahead and start closing some of these images because I don't think I'm going to need to go back into them. And I have copies in my working file. So the next thing I want to work on is I want to work on this little guy here. And I'm going to, again, I can always work in this file and bring the layer over. So let's do that so you can see how that works as well. So I'm gonna come into this image and I'm gonna go to my background. I'm gonna hit hit Command J to duplicate my layer, turn off my background color. Let's do this select subject. I'm very curious. So all I did, just in recap, I had this photo and I went up to. And I noticed this button up here, select subject, and I just clicked that and it selected the subject in the photo. So that's cool. Like as computers and as software gets smarter and smarter, it's not surprising that these technologies exist. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit my layer mask button, and that has taken out the background. And like I was saying, I don't need the boy. I need the headset. I'm going to put the headset on the monkey. So I'm going to go here and select layer 1. I'm going to hit Command J again so I have a copy of the mask. So what I want to do now is I actually want to take this file and I want to drag it over to the right hand side. So I'm grabbing the tab and I'm dragging it over to the right hand panels until a blue line pops up like the one that you're seeing on screen, and I'm going to release it. This puts two files right next to each other. So we have the VR headset and we have our main composite over here. I'll save that real quick. So what I want to do is I want to take this layer and just drag it into this. Now you can't take this layer and like drag it up to the tab and make sure it loads and then drag it down. But I like this side by side version because it's a little bit easier. So we're just going to take this layer that we have, it's nice and refined, and just bring it over into our working file and drop it. And this has added a new layer. At which point we might want to go ahead, since we've done some work in this VR headset, go ahead and save this as VR headset masked, maybe. I don't know. And I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of that and close that. So we're gonna be back into this guy, and we can see how massive this is. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to scale this down and work with this. I may go ahead, and I'm not the best at doing the copies of it, but in this instance, I'm going to go ahead and copy the layer just so we have an original that is that size in the file. And I'm going to go back to this layer. I'm going to hit Command T. And I'm just going to scale this down. And you can see that it's acting like I'm scaling the entire photo. Well, remember, the entire photo is still here. So I basically want to get this headset to somewhat of a size that's going to fit on this monkey. I'm going to have to adjust a few things with the image and things like that. So generally, in a lot of instances, we wouldn't want to like distort our photo, but here we're doing a artistic piece, basically, right? The one thing I did look at when I was picking these photos, and once I got the idea of having the VR headset on the monkey, is that I made sure that the orientation of the person that I was grabbing the photo from was the same as the monkey was sitting. So I think that's good right now. I could tweak it a little bit so that this fit a little bit better, but I think I'm going to play around with my masks and get his ear poking out from above this headset a little bit and take out some of his fur as well. And then we'll go in and we'll soften up the edges so that everything matches it looks like it's the same photo. I'm just going to double click on that. I'm going to zoom in here a little bit, and I'm going to make sure I click on the mask of the VR headset. I'm going to take my brush tool. I'm going to hit B as in boy to grab my brush. Make sure that my hardness is somewhat hard. That's the edge of the brush. So the less hard the brush is, the softer edge you will get. The harder it is, the sharper the edge is. And for this, since I can go in later and make it less sharp, I'm just gonna start with a very sharp edge. I'm just gonna come in and I'm gonna, just take this out. And since I'm painting, again, I'm painting on the mask, I'm not destroying this image in any way. I'm just covering up what I don't want. And I'm going to actually bring back in some of the stuff so it looks like the fur is kind of coming over top of it. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. I'm going to hit X to switch my foreground and background color. I'm going to soften up the edge of my brush. I'm going to come back in. I'm going to add some stuff in here before I get to... don't go too far, though, because you will bring back in some of your other image. Before I grab my smudge tool, I just want to make sure that I have some of that element in. So then I'm going to grab my smudge tool, and I'm just going to smudge some of the basically what I'm doing is smudging the white into the black, and I'm bringing that fur back on his ears. I'm revealing, basically, like when fur goes over an object, you'd be able to see through it. So that's basically what I'm doing here. what I want to do now though is I want to go up in here into my layers, and I'm going to select both these layers, and I want to hit this chain link right here, and that's going to link these two layers. Since it's a headset on the monkey, I do want to make sure that whenever I move the monkey or I move the headset, that, you know, they're linked. That doesn't mean we can't put adjustment layers on the monkey that only affect the color of the monkey or just the headset. That can definitely be done still, but this basically means whenever I move them, they'll move together. So I think I'm happy with what this looks like. I'm good with that, and I want to look back at what other photos. So I was going to put a crown on them, but I don't think so. Oh, I do want to use this. So I'm going to go ahead and take these, and I'm going to do a select all, copy, bring them back in here, paste. This is massive and huge. It's pasted it in between my two layers, but that's okay. I really want it behind, but above my background. And I am going to scale this down. So I want these planes to be in the background, kind of flying in the background, kind of a salute to our Monkey King. And this layer actually needs to come down below the background layer, and that's still pretty big. A little bigger than I want, actually. I really want them kind of small. And so what I want to do, before I go in taking out the background and seeing all of that, you know, going to all that work, what I want to do is I want to play around with my layer style. So if you just come in up here at the very top of the layer panel, you'll see normal. And then you have all these different layer styles. And I would be lying to you if I said I knew what every single one of these does. I think you learn over time which ones work the best for you. But starting out, just go ahead and play around with it. And you can see as you roll over them, they do different things. And they're going to have different effects. And so you're just going to want to go through them until you find an effect that you like. And then we can do more things with layer masks to get it to look half decent. And I am zoomed in so you guys can see the changes. And luckily there's part of that photo there as well. But I'm going to zoom out before I make a decision on what I want to do with them. So I can just see, you know, that's kind of cool. That's pretty wicked. You know, some of them you just lose the planes too much, and I definitely want that to be part of this exploration. Color dodge is always fun, but you can't see the planes again. And I'm going to add photos to this, so this is going to be a process. With hard light. And then I'm going to add a layer mask just by clicking on the button. You don't have to have anything selected to do this. You can just add one and then start painting. So I'm going to get my brush tool by hitting B on the keyboard, increasing my brush size by hitting close bracket, checking the hardness. It's relatively soft. I'm just going to paint away the edges is kind of my first step. It's not blending really well, which is a bummer. Blending pretty well on the sides here. And this may not work. Like, I may want to go ahead and delete my layer mask, come back in and change this to normal. And then I'm gonna, you know, I'll cheat. I'm gonna use the magic wand tool. This is something that's going in the background, so I'm not too concerned with how great it looks. And I'm gonna select inverse, so that's Shift Command I or Shift Control I on a PC. Make sure it masks out the right thing. See that I didn't do a great job here. You could also select this and then go up to select and do similar, and it will go through the entire photo and select similar colors. And I'm just going to delete that out. The reason I'm okay with using the quick selection tool in this instance is because as soon as I put it in hard light, it's really going to start to blend it into the background where it's not really going to matter too much to me anymore. It takes away a lot of those mistakes. I am going to grab my lasso tool because I have some other things I need to do. I need to grab these contrails here. And I'm going to copy this and paste it. Now it's going to paste a dark contrail like that, which is fine. But we'll fix that. And then holding down Option, I'm just going to move these, and that's going to create a new layer. But again, I'm not mad at that. So I have these 3 new layers. So I'm actually gonna, it's layer 6 and 6 copy and 6 copy 2. I'm gonna select all 3 of them, and I'm doing that by holding down Shift. I'm gonna come into my pull down menu here, and I'm gonna do merge layers. And that should merge only the layers that I have selected. I'm gonna take my magic wand tool by hitting W on the keyboard, and I'm gonna select the blue, go up to select, similar, select inverse again, and then click on my layer mask tool, and then go in and make sure this is set to hard light so it matches the contrails from the original image. You can see that I had a little issue here. I didn't quite get the contrails behind the mountains, so I'm going to cheat that a little bit by scaling it disproportionate. I'm also going to right click on this, and I'm going to do a skew and kind of skew that back in. Or even distort would work, where I can get these to be, double click on that, zoom back in, and you can see that we have some overlap. So I'm going to go into my mask tool, brush, and decrease the brush size, make sure that my foreground color is black, and just cover these up. And I know I have that really hard edge, and that's a problem. So I'm going to come back to my layer mask on the top photo, kind of smooth that out. Right? And then come back to this one, reverse my, oops. Kind of bring the contrails back in. And there's like, you know, some contrails actually do have these breaks, so it wouldn't be unheard of to kind of break the contrail up in a more natural and more like that than anything. You can also lower the opacity of your mask, of your brush. So you can kind of come in here and just hit it ever so lightly. So that's looking pretty cool. Pretty cool salute to the monkey man. I am going to link these to the planes and the contrail, hitting my chain link. So now if I move this around, so I'm starting to like how it looks. One of the things I do want to add in, and I'm just going to add a new layer on top of my background, and I do want to bring back in those misty mountains from before. I want to add a new layer, and I want to bring in some of the cyan from the sky here. I'm going to use my eyedropper tool, which I switched to the tool by hitting I on my keyboard, and I'm just selecting this blue back here. And I'm going to take a paintbrush, rather large paintbrush, and with relatively low opacity, maybe to start off with, and I'm just going to paint over my background here, just to get a little bit of this blue in, and you may be thinking, well, that's certainly turning it blue, and I'm aware that it is, and that's fine, and I may eventually bring it over the monkey as well, because he needs to have a little bit of that blue hue from the sky in there. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go up to my layer styles, and I'm just going to kind of go over it. And this may not work. Like I'll be completely honest. I don't know 100% what is going to work and what's not. But I'm going to use this color style, and I am going to add a layer mask, and I'm going to start taking away. I'm going to lower my opacity down to maybe like 30%. And I'm going to start taking away some of this. Again, I'm not erasing any of that blue layer. I'm just kind of bringing back some of the original sand color. And I could go all the way down to like a 5 or a 10%. Go down to like 5% and really lightly bring out some of that color. I really just wanted a blue tone to the color, to the sand. And so much of this is plain. So, I mean, I could come back in and say, okay, I want to now paint some in at 5% to kind of get these, or maybe I want to get some of these brighter pinks in here and paint this way and create some sort of, self-made gradient. And I'm doing it ever so slightly, like 5% at a time. You're basically just building up. If I wanted to, I could increase. And I am painting on the layer now, on this topmost layer. If I zoom in for you guys can see I'm adding that pink, and there's my mask. So I've switched in between the two. I may go in and actually in this color and make it a little bit more vibrant, more of a salmon color, to really, illuminate some of this. You can really see what it does to these rocks in the background. So I can really make them look very surreal, even though this would not be correct. Again, like I have to still use some of my knowledge of how go really big, how sun and shadow work, to keep some realism in here. So I'd probably come back in with on my mask and take this back out, so it comes back down from being as bright as it was. And I'm just doing that repeatedly. I do like having some of it though, like probably took it a step too low there. But now I'm starting to get, and I actually like the salmon a little bit better than I do the blue. So I could come in, I could paint more of that, salmon color into the blue and still get a blue tint, sorry. So I'm seeing something in the sky. This shooting star is cool, and it was cool in the original image, but I think right now I need to take it out. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to take my stamp tool again, increase the stamp size, and I'm gonna kind of select kind of right in there. Holding down shift, do a straight line. Now you can see that you can definitely tell that I put in a clone there. My everything's pretty soft. So what I'm gonna do this time though is I'm gonna come in here, my lasso tool, select that, and do a content aware fill. See what it does. It just does such a better job to do that than anything I could do with a stamp tool. thank you for your time, and have a wonderful day.